This is Trigger Point, episode 7. My name's Serena, and sitting across from me is my co-host, Peter. Hello, Peter.
Hi, everyone.
So I think we should explain why we're missing an episode last month. It's not that we're busy or too busy, or it's not because we had a falling out and decided not to record anymore. We actually recorded. We spent, I think, 5 hours talking about things, and then afterwards I spent hours editing, except 2 hours into editing I realized that our audio file was corrupted.
And we don't know why.
We don't know why. So it might happen again. We're going to be pausing in the middle of recording this episode to double check to make sure the same issue doesn't happen, because I couldn't find out the reason why, but
apparently every like sentence that we spoke, like it cut off like the end of,
it's not just the end, even in the middle, like it would just skip. The audio will skip every now and then. It originally would just skip for like a second or so, and then afterwards it skips like a whole sentence, and the audio was just not usable. So I gave up, and instead of trying to re-record the episode with we decided to squish it all into one recording, all our topics.
Yeah.
If possible, we'll make it one episode. If not, we probably have to split into 2 episodes.
Yeah. So we're going to have to re-talk about a few of the things that we talked last month.
Yes.
And hopefully this time it will work.
In our previous episode, we said that we'll be talking about LARP'ing. What happened is that we did go LARP'ing, but we also went and watched Kinky Boots.
Yep. And
we also went and watched Book of Mormons. And we've also went to watch Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, which was supposed to be the topic for this month.
Yes.
If last month's episode had gone up properly.
Yes. So now we're going to be trying to talk about all of those things.
In one episode.
And if we find out that we go way over time, I'll do some post-editing magic and make it into 2 episodes instead.
Yes.
So, okay. With that out of the way, we should begin because we don't have a lot of time.
Oh, yes.
LARP'ing. So, I was gushing about how much I really liked LARP'ing last 2 months ago.
2 months ago now.
And I decided that I would take Peter with me to one of the sessions. And just very quickly, as an overall, what do you think, as the whole experience?
Yeah. So just letting everyone know, ever since that first session, I actually haven't been back to any other sessions. So that was my only... Well, so far, still my only foray into LARPing.
Yep.
I did enjoy it, I must admit. Like, I think there was a bit of an initial kind of hesitation. I think most people, when you're talking about LARPing, the initial, thinking is like these random people dressing up and then
whacking
each other on the... Which, to be fair, it is that. But I think It's funny that once you're there and you're in the middle of it, like it actually is quite exhilarating, charging on, the quote battlefield, which was an oval.
Yes.
And just, playing, swords and shield with...
Well, there's archery too.
Well, there's archery too, yes. And healers and all sorts of other...
There's magic users.
Yes.
So they have like these foam balls, and then I don't think you saw it last time.
No, I didn't see any magic.
Since then I've been back every week, and like there are magic users, so there's things called fireballs, which is essentially a foam ball that's red or orange or whatever, and they'll run up at you and they'll just throw a foam ball at you, which... sounds kind of like, well...
corny?
They're like, how much damage could you possibly do? Well, let me tell you, not fireball, but a couple of weeks back, I was running up to the front line, and suddenly this guy says, fish! And then he throws a foam fish at me. And I'm like, I was like completely shocked. I had no idea what was happening. Before I knew it, he threw 5 more fish at me and I essentially died. I'm like, I don't even know how to block that, because he was I think it was a pirate themed, he was part of a pirate themed warband.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, people still fight with swords and all that sort of stuff, but he would run up to people first with his bag of fish and he'll throw... Those things are not soft, by the way. They are supposed to be soft, but at the speed and at the strength that he was throwing them at, you get this kind of shock. It's like, what just hit me? And then you realize there's a fish on the
Lying
floor.
on the floor.
And you're like, oh. And then by that point, three
You're
more
dead.
is hit you, and you're like, ah. That's only just because I have very low hit points.
Yes. Because you have no armor and whatnot.
Actually,
Oh, you do have armor now.
since then, I have got a 26 steel bone corset, which is part of the rules. Okay, like you can get, metal plating and metal plate armor and all that kind of stuff. But for what I needed, because I needed to run, the group that I joined, we run to do skirmishes, and some of them run in full plate armor, but I could barely run as it is. So I decided to get the alternative, which is a corset. But you need to have steel bones, and it needs to at least have 24 steel bones, which is actually quite hard to find these days.
Okay.
They need to be able to do that, you get the waist training ones. And some of the women there, they actually pull it really tight just because they got used to it. And that first time that I put it on, and someone put it on slightly wrong, because the way that they lace the back, you have to be really careful how you lace it. And they laced it wrong, and I didn't realize, because I ran and I played and I ran until halftime, and then I realized I couldn't breathe. Like, I was trying to catch my breath, and I was thinking, oh no, it's fine, it's just I'm not used to it. And people are asking me, are you okay? Do you need help? And I'm like, no, it's fine. Actually, no, I can't breathe. Could someone undo it for me, like really quickly? Because I was wearing not just that, I borrowed someone's plate armor, like shoulder and neck thing. So I had to take all of that off before people could get access to the lacings at the back. And the moment they saw it, they're like, holy crap, how were you able to run for half the game as it is? Because this was laced incorrectly. You shouldn't be able to breathe. The moment they loosened it, I was like, oh my God, I could breathe. Like, this is how it's supposed to feel like. Okay, this is how people run in this thing, because corsets aren't actually that uncomfortable. If you're standing straight, or you're sitting straight, it should be perfectly fine. It's just if you try to bend over, you find out you don't have as much flexibility. And when you're running, it really shouldn't.
Well, you shouldn't be bending when you're running.
Yeah. So there shouldn't be anything like in the way. So that was interesting. It was an interesting situation. And 24 steel, or 26 steel. It does add a little bit of weight. Not a lot, but it's a little bit of weight. So it was interesting. Sorry, it was still your story. You continue.
But yeah, so the first time, you go on the battlefield, like, so we as a newbie, I was given, this giant foam shield, and, this foam sword to kind of play around with. And although it's foam, the shield actually, after 3 hours, it actually becomes quite heavy.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised. And look, no, I do work out as well. So, it's not like I don't do any exercise. But even I did find it, after a while, I was like, oh, this is not, completely, weightless.
No.
After a while, it does take a bit of effort to kind of use it to block and use it to move around. So, it was, I don't know, I got a bit of a workout on that day.
It's not a foam. Like, if people think foam shield, it's not a floppy shield.
No, it's although it's foam, it's still quite compact.
Yeah,
so
there's a reinforcement in the middle somehow.
Yeah, so it does actually protect you. Because there's foam swords also have a fiberglass core, and so for those weapons, when they hit you, they do actually hit you as well. They do kind of hurt. So the shield does need to be able to withstand that, which it does. So it was interesting, especially not having done anything like that before. It was quite interesting, I must admit. And at the time, it was quite fun. It is quite exhilarating, just running on a field, charging with a whole bunch of people, all, yelling random stuff at each other.
And that's the thing, right? Because we went there, when I took Peter there, we both did the newbie training again. So we weren't actually part of any warbands. And unfortunately, the person who trained us that week, that he didn't really tell us too much about the rules of the game, in the sense like what was going on, because it's not just a bunch of people on the field randomly swacking at each other. You're actually split into two teams, and there's normally an objective, like catch the flag or get these items and put them into a certain location. Or there are games where it's like called assassination, which is you kill everyone on the other side of the team. And when we were doing the newbie training, he didn't really tell us what was going on.
Yeah, so in that sense, it was fun, but you kind of felt a bit out of the game as well, because all you're doing is just running around and whacking people. Like you don't see the more intricate kind of like strategies that, you know, and there are strategies, you know. It is, for all intents and purposes, it is
a war game.
A war game. So you still need to see, you know, how to flank.
Yeah.
You know, when do you attack? You know, who's your leading group? You know, who's got the shields? Who's going to protect it? And then you know who's doing the attacking. Like there is strategy and all of that. But because we weren't really told about the objectives, we weren't really told about what's happening.
Yeah.
Look, I barely even remember which team I was on.
Yeah.
Like, because the way you differentiate between your team and the other team is one team has sashes, and the other team doesn't.
Yep.
It was my first time being there, so
yep.
I don't even know where to look to see if the person has a sash or not. So,
but I can also understand why they did that, because it's your first time there, and they didn't want to inundate you, or
with
overwhelm
information.
you. Yeah.
Which again, it worked and it didn't work. It worked in the sense that we got into it in the sense like, okay, let's just go and hit and feel what it's like to be on a battlefield and stuff like that, which is fun. It failed in the sense that it didn't make me appreciate what we were doing and kind of feel that I'm part of a bigger plan, a bigger game. I just felt like we're all just individually fighting each other. Which is also one reason why I feel like I probably wasn't as interested in joining as well, because I felt like, well, I'm not really getting a storyline out of this. I'm not really getting and that's the thing with this one that we went to, because it plays every Friday night. There is a background story that goes on.
Yes.
But unless you're with a warband and unless you're kind of going it constantly, you don't get that story. So you do lose a bit of the interesting parts of why are we fighting? You know, what are you doing? Like I remember talking to some of the people afterwards about, oh, so this is why we fight and this is what our background is. And it's interesting. But at the same time, for me, I also didn't really care because like I wasn't part of the group. So yeah, there was that issue with it. The other reason why I haven't been back since is because it is a very time-consuming activity. It's at least 4 hours. Because it's 1 hour of training before you go on the battlefield, or even if it's not training, it's just like you need to be there at a certain time to register, get things ready, and then, you know, I guess if you're with a warband, you know, talk with your warband about your strategies and stuff, and then 3 hours of running around whacking each other. So it's long. Your Friday night is gone, literally.
Yes, of course, yes.
It literally is everyone, you know,
Yeah.
4 hours.
Yes.
You know, it's also not something that you can kind of go like, oh, I can only come here for like a few hours and join in for a bit. Go like,
yeah, it's a lot of effort. I mean, if you put all your gear on and everything, and then you just go there for like an hour, like, what's the point?
Yeah. So for me, especially because, you know, me and with studying, with work, with all my other activities that I do, I do find it quite hard to find, you know, 4 hours every week to kind of participate in something. In saying that, I feel like I probably will go again, but not in the next foreseeable months anyway. I enjoyed it. Like I did find it's not what I expected.
Yep.
And I definitely think everyone who hasn't tried it, probably at least give it one try.
Yep.
It's not what you expect. No. I feel like, at least I think LARPing has kind of come a long way since its initial days where it was kind of very fake. I think is a lot more intricacies and etiquettes that goes into it these days, which for people who isn't part of that community probably doesn't realize. And I must admit, like, some of the armors and weapons that people have is amazing. The details, the craftsmanship of some of the weapons, they look fantastic.
Even if you weren't,
even if you were part of it, I would buy one just because they look absolutely amazing. Me and Serena were looking at some of these weapons that were on sale, and we were like, "Oh, that one looks really nice. Oh, I want to buy this one." But they're quite expensive, though.
Yeah. Oh, that looks really pretty. Oh, it's $200, right? And that's not the...
That's like a cheap one, $200.
Yeah, exactly. Like you go to some of the websites that sell these things, and I'm not talking about custom made ones. I'm just talking about some of the ones that are really pretty. $400, $500 US, right? Not including shipping. And then if you want to make customized ones, I don't even want to go into that. I mean, okay, sure. I found a website that does customize for like, I think $300 US, but that's because I didn't go all crazy with the stuff I was choosing. It was fairly bland for what was available. But like the weapon, and it turns out to be one of the cheaper pieces of items that you could get, because I have since decided to get plate armor, like shoulders and braces and greaves. I haven't gotten them yet. I am going to probably be spending $300 on a very basic set of stuff. Some of these people have like flanges coming out of their shoulders and like, you know, etchings and all that stuff. They're spending like thousands of dollars. They're going out into the field with like thousands of dollars worth of gear, getting whacked at. Like this stuff gets dented, but you know, and they get them repaired and all that stuff. But they spend a lot of money on their gear.
Remember the guy that had the full knight's armor that we spoke to? Like his armor was like really impressive. Like like his whole body was like every single piece was literally a piece of armor. Like
they're metal. They're not like plastic.
And they looked absolutely amazing. And when I asked him how much it was like what, $1,000, $2,000?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
So
it was a lot of money.
Look, when a set of leg armor are like $300, then a set of arm is what, $300, then shoulders, and then chest plate, and then like all sorts of things. It just adds up. It just really adds up.
And that's the other thing. Like, this is not a cheap hobby.
No.
Like, if anything, it's probably one of the more expensive hobbies that I can think of at the moment. Anyway,
Don't even talk about armor. The dresses, like just the clothes that you wear. Some of these people, a lot of these people, make their own clothes. I can't operate a sewing machine. So I've been looking online, and some of these places, I should probably mention right now, at this moment, right now, about 1,500 people are now meeting up in a out of the way place, like 2 hours, 3 hours from the city, and they're going to be doing LARPing for a whole week. And I'm not going there because I didn't have enough time to prep. Because they're not just wearing one set of clothing for the whole week. Okay, they have their armor and stuff, but they have normal clothes that they wear. Because I have joined a warband, I've seen the stress that the members have gone through, like sewing things up and things. Like it started on Sunday, right? They were sewing late Saturday night, Sunday morning, to get these clothes finished. So they have like 7 sets of clothing. And there was actually a ball. There's going to be a ball on Friday night. So the moment that was announced, you had like hundreds of people just suddenly faint because now they realize they have to make a ball dress or like an outfit, or something for that night. And people were buying materials by like, you know, meters and meters, you know, like they was just looking at patterns and stuff to try and get these stuff made, like, and because it's getting cold now, cloaks, suddenly everyone had like rushing to make cloaks. Obviously I went on Taobao and ordered one. It was taking months to get here. I hope it gets here while it's still winter. Because
that actually is quite interesting that they have like a ball in like a middle of a campaign.
Well, that's the thing. Because normally they do the quest thing. It's called Quest. There's a week-long camping experience, and they're all immersive. They're in the character for a whole week. And previous quests, the reason why they're all gathered together is always for war, like story-wise, is for war. But this time they're gathering together for a celebration. So that's why there's a ball. Okay, so it's not fighting every day. They have, because it's a celebration, there will be a fair, it'll be a carnival. There's workshops, so people teach you how to shoot an arrow, or how to make a shield, or how to get in character, or certain things like that. Like, there's stuff that's in character. So if you're a healer for that whole week, you will be gathering items to make healing potions. Because on the Saturday night, on the Saturday night, a Saturday day, there'll be like the final battle. That there will be a battle, but everyone's prepping for that, like getting the items that you need, getting the gold that you need, because the warband that I joined is a mercenary group. So we will be selling our services to the highest bidder because there's in-game currency, so to speak, and we're going to try and see which side
can pay you more.
would pay us more. And even if one side paid us more to fight on their team, when I say there's two sides, the sides are actually consisted of many smaller groups. So sometimes a small group would come to us from the other side who say, okay, I know you're fighting against us, but I'll pay you this much money to not kill any of our team like our team.
Yeah.
And as long as it doesn't conflict with the rest of the objective, our team leader, our warband leader, would probably accept it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because according to what he's told us about previous quests, we have done certain things like that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're mercenary.
Yeah.
We fight for gold. And so, if our team loses, if the whole overall thing is that we were losing, and someone has paid us to make sure we don't kill their team members, well, we're losing anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Killing them is not going to make any difference, so we might not kill them. So there's certain things like that. And the funniest thing about Quest is that this in-game currency, it is worth as much as you say it's worth. So people would bring loot to the game. Like, they'll buy trinkets and necklaces and stuff you buy from like savers or op shops and stuff like that. You can spend a couple of dollars, and then you go and you could get robbed, and you can fight, and you could probably kill the robbers, or the robbers manage to kill you, and then they'll be like, do you have anything on you that I could loot? If they've done a good enough RP role-playing job in like robbing you, like, and all that stuff, you might say, yeah, I actually do have something here, take this, and you can take it as a piece of a loot, so it's a necklace or something. Or you could be a merchant and you have all these jewels and gems and stuff like that, and you meet another character and you say, do you want this necklace? This necklace has actually been blessed by these priests or something. And if you make a good enough backstory, and then you say, this is worth 2 pieces of copper, the other character might be willing to pay you those copper for this necklace that doesn't do anything, right? But it has a story.
Yeah.
As long as you convince them.
Yeah. Again, it's part of the role playing. Like,
yeah.
So
I'm kind of having a very major FOMO. FOMO meaning fear of missing out. I'm experiencing a lot of FOMO right now because all of them have gone, and everyone who was on the Facebook page or on the chat that we were talking about Swordcraft the whole time. Because I've now been in this for 2 months now, and I've been inundated with all this information, and everyone's chatting all the time, and suddenly they're all gone. They're all disappeared for the next week or so, and everyone's like, there's 6 of us left in the chat room, because they've gone off to the middle of nowhere. There's no reception, right? It's like we hear crickets chirping because there's no one around, and we're kind of a bit sad because everyone's gone, and they're having a lot of fun, and they're going to come back with a lot of stories, and we're not.
Okay, so that's our experience with LARPing, and since then Serena has been going every week, is it?
Yeah, every week for 2 months, and it's not just the Fridays, but also my warband used to do shows on Thursdays at a burlesque place. Then there's the game on Friday, and then there's training on Sundays. So
I never thought I would ever hear Serena and the word training in one sentence.
Not just training outdoors.
Yeah, training outdoors. Physical training outdoors.
I was out in the sun, and last week I was out in the rain. And
you're being active.
I know.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. It's like I've been brainwashed. After every training session, I would, even during training, there'll be these moments where I'm like, what are you doing? What
That's-
happened to sitting at home, flipping through Netflix shows, or like just surfing the net? What is this being outdoors, breathing fresh air, like heaving fresh air since I've been doing excessive amount of, physical activity? What is this? But it's enjoyable. It's very interesting.
And you get a rush of adrenaline out of it as well.
Yes. And then when the adrenaline fades and I start feeling every single ache, and all the bruises because I'm terrible at blocking, that's fun too.
That's fun.
I am
think.
now thinking about investing in a pair of gauntlets. Even though technically gauntlets don't give you a lot of HP game-wise, it's actually very necessary in real-life situations, because if you're a person like me who works 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday typing on typing on keyboards, it's not fun to do that when you have a bruised finger, which I did a couple of weeks back. Like my pinky and my forefinger, they were like a little swollen. They were purple, and typing was not good. So gauntlets.
So we'll move on to our next topic. So this wasn't part of our
Original
plan, but we ended up watching a musical called Kinky Boots. And so we're going to talk a bit about that.
Do you want to tell them about how we went to, how we got around to watching it?
So initially, when Kinky Boots first came out, I wasn't interested in watching it at all. Like
years ago.
Yeah. When it came to Melbourne anyway, like I had no inclination of watching it. The posters and there wasn't even really much ad for it, to be fair.
Well, I wouldn't know since I don't watch.
Well, you don't watch TV anyway. Yeah. The simple thing was like, we weren't going to watch it at all.
No, it wasn't.
There was not anything that kind of strike me as like, oh, this is going to be a great show, or there was nothing to indicate that would be something that I like.
Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, the poster of a white backdrop with a pair of red stiletto boots.
Yeah.
It was like, why? Like, how does that?
Yeah, what is that telling me? It doesn't really tell me much.
Anything, yeah.
So we weren't going to watch it, but I had a high school friend of mine who I used to do a lot of shows with, and she's a really good friend of mine. And she was saying, "Oh, you really have to watch the show. It's a really brilliant show, and you'll love it." And she's yet to give me a bad suggestion, and I know her taste in musicals, and they fit quite close with me as well. So I was like, oh, okay, she literally said, I highly recommend you watch it. Like, if you definitely have the chance, you should definitely go watch it. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good recommendation from someone that I have high trust in.
And then Peter tells me this, and I also believed Peter because I also believe that we had a lot of things in common. I mean, this show is telling us otherwise. Doing this show has let us find out a lot about each other.
But in terms of
music and
wise,
shows, and as long as it's not books. So when Peter told me that his friend highly recommends this and he really trusts this friend, I'm like, okay, I want to watch this too. Now, in saying that, even though I decided I was going to watch this show, I still didn't read anything about it, right?
No.
I had no idea what this show was about.
No, neither.
And we pretty much went in there...
Had no idea what the show was about
no
at all.
Expectations, no nothing.
Yeah. And I loved it.
Oh, yeah,
It was literally, I think, one of the best shows I've seen in years. I would go so far as to say it's probably been my favorite show in the past 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
It's very, very, very good. Like, it's funny though. It's not a show that kind of grabs you straight away. But it was just a really great show in in the way it was executed, the music, and the way the story was told. I think, yeah, it was just so wonderful and so heartwarming. Like it's a show,
very positive.
Yeah, it's a show that just gives you so much positive feeling after watching it, and it just, yeah, it's nice once in a while to feel uplifted by a show.
No, I really enjoyed it. Would it say it was the best show I've had seen in 10 years? I don't know. It's hard for me to say that because I actually love Phantom of the Opera. And so when...
Phantom isn't out in the last 10 years.
No,
though.
no, which is why I was going to say Love Never Dies. Okay. Before you give me the death stare, I know Love Never Dies is very controversial. I don't like most of the things that they did there. But I did love the songs that they gave the Phantom. And I did like how the two male leads have so much more songs in this, and they duet very well. In saying that, when I watched it, I watched one of the first few shows when it first started, like one of the practice shows. Yeah. They were really enthusiastic. They were really good. And then I watched it again from work, and they changed the storyline a little bit.
Right.
And they didn't sound as enthusiastic as well. So from that point of view, before people send me hate mail, if people watch the normal show, which already has changed even more than what they had, I understand why you hate it. It was crap. I watched it before they changed it, which was much better. So from that point of view, that kind of musical, like that era, that kind of storyline, I like better than Kinky Boots.
Yeah.
Because Kinky Boots is a bit more realistic in a way.
Well, it is based off a real story as well.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was actually based on a... Well, okay, so Kinky Boots was based on a film, and the film was based on a real story.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, just...
I also think it's also because of the setting, right? Kinky Boot is based in a small town in the UK somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the flashy stuff that you see is from Lola. Oh God, I don't want to say the wrong words here because she was pissed off when she's not a transvestite. She's a drag queen. Sorry, drag queen. That's the word I'm looking for. So all the flashiness comes from her.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone else's costumes in the show was fairly bland. And not much to look at. So in that sense, I like shows like Phantom more because you get to see all the pretty clothes. And so when you say,
well, it's an era piece, and you know, period pieces are more
visually appealing.
It's just the way that era worked.
Yeah.
With, you know, current, like when we watch Kinky Boots, all the characters were dressed in what we would dress in. Like, it's no jeans. And...
Probably take minus 20 years or something.
Yeah.
Right. There was some corduroys in there.
Yeah. But yeah.
So, so in that sense, would it be my favorite? Because I take visuals as part of my experience of a Broadway show. So I wouldn't say that would be my favorite in that sense.
Yeah.
But yes, you're completely correct in saying it's a very positive show. Like the message that they had, the friendship between the two guys, how you try to accept people.
Yeah.
How there was that kind of Bogan character who, when he found out that Lola was actually a man dressed as a woman, and how he accepted him in the end.
Yeah.
That was nice. I liked that. It was very as you said, heartwarming. And the songs were very...
The songs are quite... Okay, in saying this though, when we first watched it, because we didn't listen to the original soundtrack when we watched this show. Yeah. So our first impression was what we heard in the Australian production. Yeah. And they were really good. Like they did a really great job with the production. All the sound was brilliant. In saying that, when we then listened to the original soundtrack, both me and Serena had this issue with the amount of synthesizers that was used.
Oh, there were so many like 80s or 90s synth music in the background. You're like, it's...
Well, to be fair, like, okay, the show was written by Cyndi Lauper. The music was written by her. So the original soundtrack has a lot of her in it.
Yes.
Where it was very noticeable her. Like, I feel like that type of synth and that type of music, that era
flair,
kind of
yeah.
flair is very
Her.
her. The Australian production toned that down quite a bit. Like there was a lot less synth in it.
I didn't even notice any.
There was a little bit of it, but like for example, the Lola song, Lola's introduction song has to have synth because that is kind of what it makes it. But it's also not overpowering. It's only there at the beginning, so it kind of alludes to that type of music.
Yeah.
But it's not to the point where it completely overpowers everything else, which was done really well, I think, in the Australian production. Like they managed to still keep that musical identity, but not make it sound outdated.
Sure.
I felt the original soundtrack in certain parts did feel outdated because of the heavy use of the synth.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, but in saying that, like the original, it wasn't as to say the original production was horrible. It was just that it was noticeable for us because we watched a version that it didn't have all that, and both me and Serena liked the non-heavily synthed version
Like
better.
time and time again, I just wish that they made an Australian recording, like the album, because I would buy it. I would totally buy it. And I mean, it doesn't cost much money to make albums nowadays. Like you don't have to actually print a CD. You can just have it on iTunes or something. It's
and the thing is, I reckon, well, actually, we reckon that the Australian production, the Lola in Australian production, is so much better than any Lola that we've seen.
And when we say any Lola we've seen is because we spent a couple of hours looking through YouTube videos of
other Lolas in productions elsewhere, in UK,
in
US.
America, in Japan, in Korea.
Surprisingly, I was so surprised that there's such a strong musical culture in Korea. I'd never realized it. Like Japan, I always knew because they had a lot of musicals in there, but I had no idea that Korea was so heavy.
Although
well.
in saying that, do we know it's heavy or is it just?
True. Well, at least they have it though.
True.
Like, I mean, at least they have it. Like, we look at Hong Kong, multicultural city, and everything. They don't have musicals there.
They have musicals there.
Really? I've yet to see one in Hong Kong in the 2 years that I was there.
No, I know. I didn't see one. I know they had some, but not international. International.
And they were always really small productions.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
To the point where their production value is pretty much what in Melbourne, our
high school stuff is.
Well, amateur theatre.
Okay.
Our amateur theatre is about their production in Hong Kong.
Only just because they don't have a lot of audience members. People don't go and watch it, so they don't have the budget.
But like the Korean version seemed to be literally the same as the one we saw here. The way the set was done and everything. So
in that sense, in that case, I just wonder whether it's like a franchise, like they just ship the things over. Yeah,
but at least they still did it, and
that's
they must have had. They must have still had audiences, otherwise they wouldn't really show it, right?
Well, that's true.
The fact that they were willing to import the whole production over
the set
and everything, So I was really surprised that Korea had such a strong musical culture to begin with.
In saying that, the Lola that we saw, the series of Lolas that we watched on YouTube, and I'll include a link to one of the videos we watched. There were a lot of men who could try to do the sass, right? When they're standing still, they'll shake their booties and they'll sing. But the moment they start walking, you can tell that they're
not comfortable with it.
They're not comfortable in the boots, in the heels, and they don't do much facial expression. Whereas I think our Lola really got into the...
Oh, she was brilliant. Just every movement that she did, and she walked on those heels like they were nothing. She totally handled those like that. Look, I've yet to meet any of my female friends that can wear those heels and walk like that. Serena, you want to try?
No. So the Lola that we had was played by Callum Francis.
Yeah.
So he's a British star, and I believe he was the understudy.
He was the understudy for the original
Lola
in
the UK.
Yeah.
And he was fantastic. That before we go anywhere else, before we say anything else, back to the Korean Lola. One of the Korean Lolas that we saw, the moment that they revealed her looks, we're like, wow, did they not have anyone to choose from? Because he looked like a middle-aged man, not very fit. He looked like a middle-aged man dressed, wearing a dress.
Yes.
He did not look like a drag queen. He looked like a middle-aged man in a dress.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? What?
Why?
Like, this is terrible. Except then he started moving, right?
Of all the Lolas that we've seen, apart from Callum, he was probably the most enthusiastic in his movement.
Like, he really did prance across the stage. Now, whether he did a good job is to be
for
to be
debate,
argued. But he really tried. Whereas some of the others, you saw that they kind of like held back, or there was a slight hesitation, or they weren't fully
committed.
Committed to it. He really went there. Like, he shook his butt.
Yeah.
He winked. Like, it was quite disturbing. But he winked at the audience. He pranced. He shook his butt while he walked across the stage. Like, it was very enjoyable. Like, watching him was very entertaining.
Yes, it was very entertaining.
In saying that, I wonder whether it became more of a joke. Yeah. But I don't know. I didn't watch the whole thing.
No,
but
that was a snippet. So, well, look, I don't even know if that was even really the full production of it, because that was just one scene that we saw. I don't know whether it was, I don't know,
a skit.
Yeah, a skit. It could probably have been. But in saying that, the guy did do a very good job in trying to do the movements.
Yeah.
And of all the Lolas we've seen, he was probably as close as they were when it comes to being enthusiastic about his movements.
Yeah.
A lot of the other ones, you always felt that there was some reservation about themselves, I feel. That
They were a little bit stiff.
Yeah, it seems like they themselves were never completely comfortable with the fact that they were in this costume and in this heel and having to do these movements. And so as it translates on stage, it just becomes even more noticeable. Yeah. Like, as an audience, I feel like I can see you're not comfortable.
Yeah, they didn't sell me on the idea that this person feels they were sexy.
Yeah.
Right? Because Lola sings. There are certain songs where he sings that he's like, he relishes in his sexuality, so to speak. And not only as a drag queen, when Lola was in his in his Simon garb, there was a scene where he was singing about how he's not a homosexual, he loves women. And when I was watching Simon on stage, when I was watching Lola, I was thinking, wow, she's one sexy woman, right? When I saw him as Simon, I'm like,
he's also a sexy guy.
He's a sexy man too. And I don't know how many Lolas would manage to pull that off.
Yeah, it's fine to be able to pull one of it and be committed enough to do that, but to be able to also portray both roles with equal amount of sass is quite something. It is something quite different.
And he was wearing heels while he was as a Simon role, and I'm like, oh my god, he's so sexy.
I think one of the reasons why we enjoyed Kinky Boots so much was because Lola was so outstanding.
Oh yeah,
she stole the show like nothing else. It was literally like, come on, more of you. Whereas the Australian production, the Charlie, look, he's not bad. Acting wise, I quite enjoyed it. I thought his acting was quite good. except I had a very strong issue with his voice.
Singing voice.
Singing voice. Okay, I did watch this show twice now. So I watched it one time with Serena, and then I think the week later I watched it with my friends.
Oh, so I'm not your friend?
Yeah, you're my co-host. You're only a co-host. I'm so hurt. That the first time I watched it, I had a lot of issue with his voice because it always felt like he had this like veil in front of him. Like there's no like it wasn't projecting. I felt like I can never hear him, and it was so much more, and it was so noticeable because the very first, not the first song, but he has a duet at the start with his best friend.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the Australian production, I can hear his best friend so much clearer than I can hear him. And so I was like, you're like the understudy at this point. Like if I was looking at it, I felt like, are you the understudy? Because you sound like the understudy. That was really, really bad thing to say. In saying that, the second time I watched it, he was a lot better.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was he just didn't warm up as well that day. Then again, the second time I watched it was the final performance. So I don't know. It
might be like a more enthusiastic. Oh, okay.
Last show.
Last hurrah.
Yeah, last hurrah. So I'm going to do it better. So he was a lot better in the second show.
Well, here's the question, right? You know how there was a duet between Charlie and Lola?
Yeah.
Or Charlie and Simon?
Yeah.
That second time, when I first heard it, I felt like they were both very soft.
Yeah.
Probably because Simon had to tone his voice down so that Charlie could be heard. The second time when you watched it, was it a stronger song, or were they still very soft because of the mood?
No, they were still very soft. So I think it was meant to be like that.
Okay.
I agree though. I felt like they were both trying to soften their voice so that they can allow each other. They can allow each other to kind of be heard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that worked very well.
No. No, because there was a part when they were harmonizing, and I wanted to I like this sound, but I would like it a little louder so I can actually hear it. And I was wondering whether they did it the second time when you watched it.
It was still very soft, so that part didn't make much of a difference. Yeah. So it was a great show, as I've said, but as with all good things, there's always, if you really want to pick on it, there's always certain parts that could be improved on, or, one of the main issues I had with the show was the pacing of the show.
It's not too hard of a stretch to complain about this, to be honest.
No.
It was a very obvious issue. Because at the start of the show, you have this, I think about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, where you have, it intros the characters as kids, it intros his relationship with his father, how with his fiance, it kind of shows how he wanted to leave the country behind and go into the city, and then the moment they're in the city, he gets a phone call to say his dad died, so he has to go back.
Yeah.
And so that whole section felt a little unnecessary because it was like it didn't really give much to the show except for telling you a little bit of what his relationship was with his dad. And I felt like you could have done that some other way.
It also didn't help that first song was really forgettable.
Yeah.
It was really not a great song to start the show.
No.
And honestly speaking, when I first heard the song, it was literally at the start of the show.
Yeah.
This is what I thought in my mind. I was like, oh my God, I've got to sit through, 2 hours of this. This is going to be a long night. Yeah. I literally, that was my first impression of it because that first song did not impress me at all.
Even the second time you heard it?
Nah, it was still a crappy song to begin the show with. And so, which is why I
Well, okay, sorry. On the side, it's better to start off with a crappy song than end with a crappy song.
That is true. which is why I was really impressed with the show because it changed my point of view of the show so quickly. From that starting point where I was kind of like, this is not going to be a great show, to at the end of like, oh my God, this is like one of the best shows I've seen in 10 years.
Yeah.
It just shows how well the other parts of the show was.
Yeah.
In saying that, the first part in that first act was kind of really slow and drawn out, and could have been probably done a little bit better in some respects.
But we didn't watch the movie, right?
No.
So that might be very important to the story.
Yeah.
And that's why they kept it in the musical. Unfortunately, they didn't actually tell, like, we don't feel how important it is.
Yeah.
It felt kind of throwaway in a way.
Yeah, especially since the whole thing with, him not wanting to kind of be, the heir to this factory. Like, that whole thing was kind of alluded to, but like, we didn't feel it. We didn't feel his, like, strong urge to leave this place and start a new life.
Well, they kind of hit us over the head with it throughout the whole show, right? Like, constantly.
But we don't feel it, though. That's the problem. It's like
something they tell us constantly.
Yeah, they kept on reminding us, Charlie really wants to leave this place, and he's not happy being, but we never see it from his actions.
No. Because he's there. He's trying to fix the factory.
Yeah.
And he's like, but why do you want to fix the factory? I thought you wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And they constantly tell us that. And because they constantly tell us that, I don't think they needed to show us that first scene.
Yeah.
They're going to be telling us that throughout the whole show anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but the pacing issue wasn't only limited to the start. The start of the second act also had a similar issue. I'll let you talk about this one since you have more beef with this than I did.
Well, no, okay, because the end of the first act, they end on a high note, right? They managed to make the pair of boots that were sexy boots that were made for drag queens. That was the way that they were going to revitalize this factory. And they end on a high note, which was a little strange to me because I'm normally used to shows where and
intermission is usually, end of the first act is usually when things fall apart and everything's gone to shits.
Yeah.
And you're basically, the second
hanging, you got a cliffhanger and you're waiting to see how the second act would improve the situation.
Yeah.
But the end of first act here, you're like, they're good, right?
Yeah.
They've made the boot.
Yeah.
Now you're like, okay.
It's such a good note to end on that you kind of like, now what? Like,
now I have something bad to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's what intermission is. Like, now I have something bad to look forward to. Which is why when the second act started, they didn't waste any time in making something bad happen.
Yeah.
Suddenly the partnership between Lola and Charlie falls apart.
Yeah.
Charlie starts yelling at everyone and saying that nothing is good enough. Like, the things that they were doing is now not good enough for Milan. They have a show in Milan. And it kind of came out of the blue.
Yeah.
Like, when they were mentioning Milan, I just thought it was like a bit of information that I forgot. I thought they mentioned Milan in this first act about something. And then I was like, why are you suddenly yelling at everyone? You knew that going in.
Yeah.
Right? You made that perfect pair of boots. You said that just 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Now you're saying it's not good enough. And I didn't understand why. And the idea was, in the story anyway, was that they weren't planning on going to Milan. They were just planning on making these pair of shoes. And suddenly they got invited to a Milan show. And that changed Charlie's mind frame. Like, he suddenly realized, we need to improve everything to make sure we're worthy of going to the Milan show. And that's why he suddenly becomes really critical, hypercritical. He starts yelling at everyone and pissing everyone off. And that was the second arc of the show, which is where I found the pacing issue came. When you suddenly have characters flip 180, you better tell them why they're doing that. And one of the best way of doing that links back to why I said the first action end on a high note. They should have had that song say, we made the perfect pair of boots. And then someone run in and say, hey, you got an invitation to Milan. And while everyone else is celebrating, you can have Charlie, looking at the invitation, shaking, maybe, standing to one side of the stage and say,
wait, this isn't good. Like,
what am I gonna do now?
Yeah.
Right? And then have the second act show up where he's now yelling at everyone. Like, then that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the, I felt that for the first half of the second act, I was still kind of reeling a little bit about why he was yelling at Lola for being a drag queen. He was saying, you look ridiculous in what you're wearing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah, like you didn't have any issue with this prior to like.
At no point in the show did he ever have an issue with him being a drag queen.
Yeah, and
Right?
that was funny because like in contrast to like Don, who obviously shows disdain
Prejudice,
for it.
yeah.
Well, at the start, and that's why it was so good to see him accepting Lola at the end of the show. He's him going through that. Charlie never had that to begin with. So when he then started saying, when you go to the airport, try to at least look like what you look like in your passport, or like it's just kind of like that was really low for no reason. Like you never seemed to had an issue with this previously, and now you're kind of making all of this
a big deal.
Suddenly making this big deal. So yeah, it did feel off at that point. In saying that, the rest of the show then quickly picked up and worked really well. Yeah, but it was that start of the second act also
the conflict didn't make sense.
Yeah, not where they put it anyway.
No, yeah, but the rest of the show was good enough for us to forgive.
Yeah, forgive the misgivings that they had at the start of each section.
I feel like before we go any further, we should mention one more character that we both really like that probably didn't get mentioned as much.
Yeah.
Lauren, Charlie's love interest.
Yeah.
I love her in this show, and I don't normally like that kind of character. She is, in any other show, she would be the kind of love interest that people ignore, right? Like there would be the main love interest, and she would be the person on the side who has this major crush on the main guy, but it's unfulfilled, and she will end up with one of the sidekick characters because she would find out, oh no, actually the sidekick character is better for her. But she's one of those kind of like slightly awkward characters,
slightly dorky,
not very elegant. Like she fans her underarm because whenever she sees Charlie, she supposedly sweats profusely. But in this show, she's very charming.
Yeah, she works very well, and one of the reasons is because we already have a very flamboyant character in Lola.
Yes, very elegant female
which
character.
kind of takes over the kind of lead female role.
Yeah.
And so if you had another female role that kind of does that, then you'll be just clashing with her.
Yeah.
So having Lauren being this kind of dorky, not really the type to wow people, it was very... it was very
enjoyable.
cute.
And the songs that she sings, she doesn't sing properly.
No.
She will squeal or like sigh or like she'll make weird moaning sounds but that's just part of her character.
Yeah.
And I enjoy listening to her song because she gushes over Charlie, and that's a problem we have in the show too, right? Charlie's name is constantly used in
every
all
other song is like every second song the word Charlie pops up.
And it's very endearing. I was really rooting for her.
Yeah.
And
over the fiance.
well, you could tell from the start that they really didn't.
The fiance, I kind of felt really bad in certain respects because as a character, like she really got shafted.
Yeah, I mean, like
it's like
from her point of view, she has a childhood sweetheart, and they've had an understanding since they were young that they were going to get away from this small town. They finally managed to get the dream jobs that they always wanted, or at least from her point, right?
Yeah.
They both wanted this job.
Yeah.
They both wanted the new jobs that they got. They go to the new city. They buy a new apartment. And then her fiance, not just a boyfriend, her fiance's dad dies. And so he says, go back and supposedly tie off loose ends.
Yeah, winds up everything.
Yeah, tie off loose ends and come back, and they were supposed to organize a wedding. Instead, he stays there way longer than expected. She's left to organize the wedding all by herself. Next thing she finds out, her fiance has took out a loan on their apartment.
Yep. And is now, trying to make all these boots that, look, honestly speaking, it was a gamble.
It was a gamble. She knew that her father-in-law wanted to sell the factory, and suddenly her fiance don't want to sell it.
Yeah. And is trying his best to fix all of this, even when he never showed any interest in it.
He doesn't take the new job. He essentially refuses the new job.
Yep.
And doesn't give her the time of day.
Yep. The best thing he could go is like, oh, you look nice.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Like, if you were like, yes, her character is meant to be
Slightly bitchy.
and slightly, I wouldn't say caring, but like she is, she is a money-oriented.
Oh, she's very not shallow. She's very materialistic.
Yeah, she's materialistic.
She wanted those shoes.
There was always a harping about, oh, look at these shoes. They're brilliant shoes. I want these shoes.
Yeah.
She's materialistic, but that's not necessarily an evil thing. Like, it's just.
By the way, those pair of shoes, you know how she wanted him to buy them?
Yeah.
And you know how in the end she was wearing them?
Yeah.
And he's like, you bought those shoes? And then she's like, you didn't expect me to wait forever, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel like someone else bought those shoes for her?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So not just me, right? It's like she found someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was what he was wanting to allude to. But
it's not evil of her to do
No.
that. How long did you expect her to wait?
yeah, and
Right.
especially, since they had that understanding that they were going to get married. But he's just kind of left her there. So
Well, like she fell in love with a certain person, right? Like the person who wanted to live in the city, who
Yeah.
wanted to work, all that stuff. Then he became someone else.
different. Yeah.
And then he even said, that's not being in the city. That wasn't what I wanted. That's
Yeah.
what you wanted.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a second.
Yeah, and it's like, and she made that quote and said, "Well, you could have fooled me."
Yeah.
Like, and that's true. If you never actually tell someone that, no, this is actually what I want, and you've always agreed to this,
Yeah.
then you're gonna assume that yes, this is what you want as well.
Yeah.
So it's not fair on her to now have to.
Not fair of him.
Oh yeah, not fair of him to expect her to support him in his endeavor now.
Yeah.
Like, especially when he's never shown this
Interest,
in the first place. So it was kind of, although that character was not meant to be. I do kind of feel sorry for her in some respects.
But like in shows like these, you kind of understand that they needed a not evil. You needed someone that represents one part of his old life, right?
Yeah.
That's constantly pushing him to give up, right? And take the easy way out.
Yeah.
And so that's why she was written the way she was.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I really liked how Lauren said when she was singing that song about how, oh yeah, and then you fall in love, like the mistakes that she would have made, and how, she fell in love with a guy who found out that he liked men, or like a guy that's not so into you, or a guy that is fiancé with a woman named
Nicola.
Nicola. Yeah, I love that line. It was so funny.
Like her song was really, really funny.
Yeah.
Like, and just the actions that she did in that song, like that, putting the blow fan and blows her own hair, like those commercials. Everyone started laughing.
The
cracking.
80s model look, the wind in your hair while you're like singing. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, now. Okay, that got really awkward suddenly.
No, I was just imagining that scene in my head. I really, really liked her. And like even the end song, when they were all singing the end song, and suddenly she's like, wait. Did you just say you like me? Does that mean you want to date me? It was very cute.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it would work in other shows.
No, this was one of those few shows that character can become the female lead. It's only because you kind of have another quotation female lead already that's not a love interest. So you can have her being the one that actually gets the guy in the end, which was nice though. Like, it's nice to see that type of character also get, their kind of get their day in the spotlight.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Kinky Boots. Did we have anything else? We talked about what we didn't like. We talked about what we did like.
Oh, I feel like one of the problems we had with this show as well was, okay, you can remember Lola because she is the main, literally. She's there. She's larger than life. You always remember her.
Yep.
You always remember Charlie because every second song has the word Charlie in it.
Yep.
They're constantly reminding you of Charlie. I kind of felt really sad for Lauren because I don't remember her name at all. It's not only until afterwards when we go, I really liked, that girl character. What's her name? I don't remember.
And we had to Google.
We had to Google it because, even the fiance Nicola, her name is mentioned in
In
the
the song,
song.
yes.
And so it reminds you that, oh yeah, that the fiance is Nicola, whereas Lauren is like, I don't remember your name. Sorry.
Even in the dialogues, there weren't a lot of mentions of people's names.
Yeah, they just say, oh, can you do this or can you do that? It's not reinforced. So
And also because this is not a fantasy world.
Yeah.
So the names are not.
it's very generic.
Yeah.
It's a very generic name. It's not one of those names that you'll kind of go, oh, okay, that's a weird name, so I will
Yeah.
remember it.
It doesn't rhyme with anything in any of the lyrics or anything like that.
But small, minor issues.
Yeah.
In general, if you ever get the chance, I would say watch Kinky Boots. I definitely highly recommend it for
Yeah.
anyone who hasn't watched it.
It makes you smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.